Thank you for joining us today at the Chai Academy, and welcome to the Chai Center. We are in the middle of a course called Jewish Ethics and Beliefs, and each class is self-encapsulated. You'll be able to, if you're a newbie, you'll be able to understand this class, even though you have not seen previous classes on this course. So it's a self-contained class. Please feel free to share this. Tell other people. This class takes place, unless there's an emergency or a conflict, Monday through Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live. So we have discussed Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick, parachaplaincy. We have discussed the idea of charity, and today there's an incredible Mishna. Mishna is Mishnaic law, and Mishna is written thousands of years ago. And the Mishnah says there are a few mitzvahs, a few deeds, actions, a few actions that we do where we will merit reward in this world and in the next world. One of them is visiting the sick. So that got me thinking, what about the others? And so today we're going to focus on two very important mitzvahs. And once again, this is not just this is universal kindness. And realize the promise of reward in this world and in the world to come is not just a Jewish reward, but a inclusive reward, and it's very rare that the Mishnah would say something like this, that you get rewards in this world and that next world. The Mishnah is law. The Mishnah is not ethereal. It's not Kabbalistic. It's very antithesis of Kabbalah. Kabbalah was taken out of the Mishnah. So the fact that the Mishnah says that there are a few mitzvahs where we can get reward in this world and the next is actually mind-boggling. Hello, Don. So the two I wish to discuss today is, one of them is called Hachnosas Orchim. Hachnosas Orchim means providing for the guests. Providing for the guests is broad, etc. So we'll try and tackle many parts of it. However, we do know Hachnosas Orchim. The Torah mentions it very early on in Genesis, where the Torah mentions that Abraham and Sarah used to entertain guests, and they developed a large following. They had guests. They basically pitched their tent or their compound of tents on a busy crossroads. The Talmud tells us these tents had doorways facing all sides, so no matter which direction you come from, north, south, east, and west, you were able to come into this glorious tent, get some water, get some food, get some shadai. And that's the Torah mentions this about Abraham and Sarah. The Torah omits many things about Abraham and Sarah. We know from the Midrash Abraham was thrown into a furnace because he disobeyed the king of the time, the chief of the tribe. And this king of his fiefdom was angry at Abraham and threw him into a furnace, but he was not harmed. Torah doesn't mention it. We have that through the Midrash, but Torah itself mentions the guests, and in fact so much so that Abraham was 99 years old when he circumcised himself. 99, when he took a knife to himself. I mean, don't test me, and it was on the third day of his circumcision. And the Torah tells us that he was talking to God. God was visiting him, visiting the sick, and he sees guests. He sees people walking. And he tells God, I'm no Sava, please, God, excuse me, I'll be right back. But let me go and bring these guests in to my tent. So you tell me, talking to God or taking care of guests? Abraham made his decision that talking to God is God would not mind. God would not mind, if he went to entertain the guests that were weary and needed sustenance and needed hydration, etc., etc. So it's just incredible. It's not only, by the way, it's not only inviting a guest, a traveling guest, etc., but it is also just inviting people to one's home. Inviting people to one's home. My first years as a rabbi, and before, I have an interesting story, but before that, every Friday night we had guests in our house before one of our kids got sick, and that was part and parcel of what we did. Now, and these guests are not just guests that live out of town, but guests from your community, entertaining people, especially on a Shabbat, or entertaining people that just had a loss, or just had a birth, or and you're helping the family get through this good time, this bad time, whatever it may be, is all part and parcel of entertaining guests. It was one great rabbi said that is actually a segula, it's a talisman for long life. Talisman, maybe that's the reward in this world. Maybe he zeroes in on it, perhaps, and says that the talisman is you will get a long life by inviting guests. Back growing up, I was born in London, England, but even when my parents came to emigrated to the United States, my father, Friday nights, used to, my mother had no idea who was coming, but Friday nights after synagogue services, he used to go over to people and say, welcome, or hello, or do you want to come to us tonight? My mother had no idea if it was 2, if it was 4, if it was 7, but it was just an open house. We had this open door policy, and once again, it didn't matter which country. People used to come into our house, and my mother knew, just make a lot of food. Don't just make chicken for 5 or chicken for 7. Make chicken for 12, or etc. Now, hachnosas orchim is not only food, but hachnosas orchim could also be, do you need a ride somewhere? Can I get you something? Can I go shopping? I know you're busy. You're taking care of your aging mother. Can I help? That's also all part and parcel of hachnasas orchim. At the Chai Center, in our bylaws, which is bylaws, must be 28 years old, 29 years old, something like that. Our bylaws state that as long as the Chai Center is open, when its doors are open, in other words, 10 o'clock at night, not necessarily the case, but as long as somebody's here and is able to answer the door, which is now locked due to security, we must have hot water brewing. It's in the bylaws, with coffee and tea, and some form of cookies or biscuits or wafers, something, in case somebody stops by and they want to use a restroom. They should also be able to make a coffee. They should also be able to grab something to eat. So that's in the bylaws. So we're very serious about it. We have a kettle of water that boils 7 days a week. It's here, and it's we have a closet, a biscuit closet, and that's part and parcel of of Hachnosas Orchim, where you just do anything you can for guests, whether traveling guests or guests who are not traveling, living in a neighborhood or whatever. So it is a tremendous thing. Now, we spoke about how there are apartments in Manhattan on the Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick. There are apartments in Manhattan if your loved one is in Lenox Hill or Columbia Presbyterian or Mount Sinai. There are these apartments that people can stay in to visit their loved ones while their loved ones are in hospital and they come from out of town, right? There are also apartments all over the world, but I think it's orchim.org, orchim.org. I think that's what it is they have hundreds of rooms for people who have come to town. They're visiting a loved one. It could be a hospital, not a hospital. Someone just is in town and doesn't have the money to spend at a hotel, $150 a night. They have hundreds. Somebody's in an emergency in the hospital. Yeah, so that we spoke about. But this is just in general. Or you're here because your child is going through a hard time, a divorce, and you want to give your child a couple of weeks of your time, but you have nowhere to stay. Contact them. And they have hundreds of apartments in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Borough Park. The hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of beds. It's just an amazing thing. But they're not the only one. I remember I was going to Texas. I had to go to Texas for my kid, to a hospital there, and one of my colleagues growing up, he was a classmate, so he has a Chabad house that's very close to the hospital. So I called him to say, what time is service and all this. He goes, Yaakov, that's my name, right? He says, listen here, I have a hotel, no charge, for guests who are coming to the hospital. You're no different, because I know you. And he goes, you're here, you're my guest. How many people? Right? That's his Chabad house. His Chabad house is a hotel, and it's a full service hotel, because he called me the day of travel and said, I see you arriving at 10 o'clock. My staff told me you're arriving at 10. All right, any special dietary requirements? Steak, chicken, fish, dairy, tell me, it's all kosher, etc., etc. So my wife is vegetarian, pescatarian, she only eats fish, so I told him, and it was there, right? So this is in Houston, and it's right by Arthur Anderson, and other places, and it's just amazing. That all goes under the banner of Hachnosas Orchim. So next time someone asks you for a ride, give them a ride. Say, okay, sure. It's 3 minutes out of your way. Big deal. There was a fellow in Brooklyn. His name is Chaim Tashkent. His name is Chaim Horowitz. He comes from Tashkent. So that's why he was called Chaim Tashkenter. So, and one time I'm driving in the streets of Brooklyn, and this character, on Bylaws, he opens my door. Why my door's unlocked in Brooklyn, who knows? He sits down, and he goes, the optician. So I said, what optician? So he looks at me in Yiddish, and he goes, far, just drive. Anyway, he gives me directions. It wasn't far. And he gets out, he goes into the optician, he comes back in, and he goes, Nemerahim, take me home. See, take him home. What it cost me, 10 minutes. And it's really just Hachnosas Orchim is being there, sensitive enough to help somebody. And it doesn't matter, and this is a key component. It doesn't matter if it's difficult for you or not difficult for you. It doesn't matter if it's a big mitzvah or a small mitzvah. Hachnosas Orchim gets you long life. Hachnosas Orchim gets you a reward. So if somebody asks you for help, it comes under the banner of tzedakah, of course. So does visiting the sick, and so does burying the dead, and so right. It all comes under the banner. But Hachnasas Orchim specifically is long life. If you have any questions on that, now's a good time before we go to our next one. So that's called Hachnasas Orchim. The Mishnah then continues and says Hachnasas Kala, which means helping out the bride. So it's not the bride per se, but it's making sure that the bride is not embarrassed at her wedding, and the bride enjoys her wedding. So just so you know, thank God this custom is done, or whatever, this shenanigans. It used to be that there's such a thing called a dowry, that the father of the bride had to give a substantial amount of money to the groom. And if you didn't give the groom whatever the custom was in that town, we're talking about in Eastern Europe, they used to break off the engagement. I mean, it was I've never seen it where an engagement is broken off for that reason. But the idea is alive and well, is that the bride and groom should be taken care of. So nowadays we don't have to worry so much about a dowry. There is a ketubah where the groom says, I'm going to support my bride with food and clothing and love and support, and my bride is going to support me likewise, etc. But the Hachnasas Kala, which, by the way, it's very clear in Jewish law, this is code of Jewish law, once again, not Kabbalistic. It says that if you have money raised to build a shul, a synagogue, you're allowed to take from those funds to help a bride and groom get married. If you have money allocated to buy a Torah, you're allowed to take money. You're allowed to take money from that Torah fund to help a bride and groom, and it's not considered, you're pilfering the fund. You're enhancing the fund. You're making the fund extra holy. The Torah can wait. The building can wait. The bride and groom can't. And that's halacha. That's Jewish law. Talk about a value. What did Jacob get? Yeah. So the father of the bride gave. Jacob got very wealthy in the end from Laban. But yeah, he had to work for many years. Maybe that's why they started the dowry, so nobody should be like a Jacob. Now, it's not easy. It's not easy to marry off a child, because there's so many expenses, right? There's the wedding hall, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the liquor, the videographer, the band, the coordinator. There's the invitations. There's the chuppah. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Truth be told, it's obscene. It's obscene. Yes, it's a happy time, and yes, you should spend money. But no, you should not get into debt where you're going to be suffering for years to come. Right? You should not. Now, having said that, there are people who don't have a lot of money, and they need help. And so there are this Hachnasas Kala funds. And there's this woman that sits on the streets of Brooklyn. She's to me, she's one of the most righteous people I've ever met. I send her a monthly check. I try to anyway. And what she does is she is a wedding coordinator. But with her coordination comes, she'll pay the musician, she'll pay the flowers, she'll pay for the bride and groom's clothing for their wedding, and she'll pay some other stuff. She will pay checks. She won't necessarily give you the checks, but she'll also pay for beds. You go into the store, and you say, Devorah Benjamin sent me, and they say, oh, okay, so these are the beds we offer. and they're yours free of charge. Where do you want it to deliver? Oh, you want a little bit better quality? Okay, so you have to add $150 to it. And that's how she works. It's amazing. I mean, she sits on a street corner with a credit card machine, and she raises $1 million. And when someone gets engaged, they call her. Just amazing, just amazing. So when I was engaged to be married, it was my turn, and I was ready. My parents, were ready, and then my sister got engaged, and my other sister got engaged, and even though it wasn't their turn, they got married first. So the time it came to my wedding, my parents were in dire straits. They just paid 2 weddings, a week before mine and 3 weeks before the first one. So I didn't want to burden my parents, and I went to a couple of friends and I said, I'd like to borrow some money, so it's not an obstacle on my parents. So they're classmates, they're colleagues. And what they did was they gave me money, and they said, this is not a loan. It's a condition, it's not a loan. Helping a bride and groom get married is considered one of the greatest mitzvahs. So we don't want the money back. What we want you to do when you're in a position, pass it on. And that's what I did. Because it's well known in Jewish circles that to help a bride and groom get married is just one of the greatest things you can do. There's an organization called 10 Yad, T-N-Y-A-D. They just raised, I think, like $5 million a few weeks ago. What they do is a bride and groom get engaged. The bride contacts 10 Yad, and they give her a wedding dress, which she gives back, and then they clean it and they alter it for the next person. Also, other dresses for the week of the celebration. They give linens. They give pots and pans and cutlery and plates and other appliances. They just give it. They just give it. Your rabbi has to say, yes, I know them. Yes, she is engaged. That's it. And I don't know if it's geographic. I'm not sure, honestly, but I know I've been asked a couple times to vouch, and it's just amazing. And as I said, because people know the value, so 10 Yad just had a virtual fundraiser with a virtual concert, and they raised $5 million. Or something, some astronomical money, amount of money like that. Just incredible. There is also gemachs where a bride and groom, they can pretty much get anything they need, right? Oh, this person just got married on Thursday. There's a wedding on Sunday. Have our flowers. And there's a clearinghouse. Oh, you just candles and candelabras. Take it. We just got married. It's yours. Table settings. Wigs. There's a gemach for wigs. Someone can't afford a sheitel. In the Orthodox circles, they wear wigs. So they get these wigs very expensive. They either get them new or they get them, refurbished. They washed and cut and set, whatever it's called, and it's just an amazing mitzvah. And the gemach, which is like a free loan fund, sometimes it's a loan, sometimes it's not, but it's just an incredible mitzvah. So these are 2 things that the Mishna says you will be rewarded. So if another part of Achnasas Kala is going to the wedding. The Talmud says that to go to a wedding and dance in front of the bride and groom is an incredible mitzvah. So realize that next time you get invited to a wedding, you say, should I, shouldn't I? I'm not in the mood, this and that and the other, whatever. Go. Just go. You go, and you even if you stay for a few minutes, but you enhance the bride and groom. There's another part to Hachnasat Kala, and that is basically if the Kala if the bride or groom doesn't have parents, so you find people to walk her down the aisle. You just help along the process. If they're bereft of parents, or if they, and by the way, I think the Mishna says it, or the Talmud says it, one of the greatest mitzvahs ever is a poor bride marrying an orphan, is you can't get more of a hachnasas kala than that. You can't get. So it's attending the wedding, it's being celebratory at the wedding, it's giving a wedding gift. These are all part of hachnasas kala, where you set this young couple up and you make them feel special, and it should be just a memorable time in their life, and not one where they feel just terrible. I was at a wedding recently. A lot of people came to the wedding, but all of a sudden, these 3 or 4 dancers came. And what they do is they go from wedding to wedding. They don't charge. They hear about weddings, and they bring props, and they bring, and they're incredibly good dancers, and they dance with the groom, and they dance with the family, they dance with this, dance with that, and the raison d'être is to make the wedding a happy time. I was in Brooklyn. This goes back a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, where I get a text from somebody I know to say, I'm at a wedding in Brooklyn, and very few people are here. Could you come? I didn't know the bride. I didn't know the groom. But I came, as if I did. So that way, it wasn't it wasn't an event, nebbish affair, but rather it was more of a, and people started to come and come and come. And I guess both these young kids didn't have large families. Maybe they were new to I don't know them, new to the community, but the idea is alive and well. Is there was a broadcast sent out asking people to come, not to eat, to come and celebrate. That is Hachnasat Kala. I think it was 1996. There was this blizzard. I think it was actually New Year's. I think it was a New Year's blizzard. I think there was a wedding in the Huntington Townhouse, and it was an incredible blizzard, and it was a local family. Anyway, so I had this fellow pick me up who had front-wheel drive, and he had all-wheel drive, and it was a terrible blizzard. And I'll answer you in a second. And nobody came to this wedding. However, there were those in Brooklyn heard about it. Now, remember, locals didn't come. You couldn't get out. It was really bad. They came, and they came by Long Island Railroad. They came. They didn't know these people. And they came in a blizzard to the Long Island Railroad. And the chuppah was outside, by the way, and it was insane. It was insane. But it was a very incredible wedding, something I witnessed. And I was invited. I showed up. So the question is, what can be done when one is the guest, and that one is new to a community, and those there who should act as hosts don't do over the course of many social occasions. So it's I don't know if you can judge them, Don. If somebody, obviously we all have to be warm and embracing. It's a must. We don't know an individual's circumstance. We just don't know. We have no idea. None. I'm sure people wonder about myself. How come I stopped inviting? I mean, many people know, may not know particulars, but it's not because I wanted to stop inviting. It was something happened. Spaghetti hit the fan. So the idea is maybe post-COVID, Don, is invite them first.
Invite them first. So there's a saying in the Talmud, b'mokim she'en ish, hishtadel li'as ish. In a place where there's nobody to act, you be that person. Right? In the place where there's no man, hishtadel li'as ish. You take it upon yourself to be the man. Right? Be a man, is what it's saying. So right? You could be a host as well. New to a community, you can be a host. We should host one another. We should take care of one another, and we should be sensitive to know the needs of one another. So having said that, practically, if there's something I can do, please feel free to contact me, rabbi@thechaicenter.com, and when we hear of a woman who gives birth, when we hear of somebody in the hospital, let's try and organize meals, Meals on Wheels. Let's try and organize where we give to the family food for a week. I think we've done that before, and we should do that again. God bless. Please feel free to share, and we'll be in touch.